Welcome back to CLI's Legalpreneur Spotlight Future 50 series. In this series, we're showcasing thought leaders and doers in legal innovation, legal tech, and AI all around the world. Today, we're going to get into all things legal ops and how this function and the roles are being impacted by GenAI. Some have foreshadowed that GenAI will be the end of legal ops. Others think that it's the superpower. I know my guests today will have thoughts about all of this and are ready, willing, and able to chat about GenAI and legal ops, what's next. So, a huge welcome to Matt Duncan, Legal Ops Manager Group Legal at the Australian Retirement Trust and co-chair of the CLOC Australia chapter. Hi, Matt.
Hello.
Anna Golovsky, Executive Manager, Legal Ops and Company Secretariat, IAG, and Co-Chair of the CLOC Australia chapter. Hi, Anna.
Hey, Terry.
And Katrina Gowans, Legal Ops Professional, Co-Chair of the CLOC Australia chapter and the CLI Advisory Board, also a member there. Hi, Katrina.
Hello, everybody.
It's great to see you, everyone. Thank you so
too.
much, and some really cool stuff to talk about. But let's kick off, if we can, by just delving a bit into your backgrounds. I'd love you to tell us about how you came to your current role. And Katrina, you get to kick us off.
Thanks, Terry. Very excited to be here today to talk about legal ops. We're all very passionate about it. I must confess, though, that it's a profession that in some ways I think I was destined for, but in other ways it was quite fortuitous that I fell into it. I'd been a lawyer in-house for a number of years and was tapped on the shoulder by my GC at the time to help with a technology implementation project as sort of a one-year secondment and a break from being a lawyer. At the time, I was given a blank page, you just need to roll this out and make it successful for the lawyers, but you'll get sick of that after a year, so expect you to come back. I didn't get sick of it, and I kept finding new projects, got a new GC, and then a couple of years ago I moved from my original role in legal ops at Origin Energy to IFM, so I've had another chance to sort of do everything a second time, and I've been absolutely blown away, I guess, by the engagement of the community that we've got, the support that I get from my peers, and I think the way that we get to have conversations like this that I feel are really at the front line of where sort of legal and technology is heading in the future.
I've got to ask you a follow-up question.
Please.
What's different good and what's different bad about being a lawyer and being in the legal ops function?
Yeah, so for me, I think I had recognised that being a lawyer, particularly in-house, you are really being pulled. So your inbox is being filled up. People are sort of setting you the deadlines. You're having to sort of respond and continually sort of meet their timeframes. I think with legal ops and what I recognised, I was sort of at a point in my life where I wanted a bit more control. And so now I'm the one that's doing, the pushing. I'm setting the timetable, I'm setting the cadence, of course, in consultation with my in-house legal team and enterprise. But I feel you get a little bit more autonomy and you just get a bit more control. But that said, you've got to be a really proactive. So if you're someone that works to a deadline, that doesn't always sort of suit the legal ops, projects that are around. So I've found that's really been a great balance for me in terms of what I really enjoy and what I'm good at.
Yeah, fantastic. And Anna, how about you? What's happening in your world in legal ops?
Well, in terms of my history and how I came into my role, I also had a long history as a private practice lawyer and also as an in-house lawyer. And when I was in-house, I was constantly trying to do things better and differently and more efficiently. I was probably telling my inner self that I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore, but that's what I was doing. And the GC noticed it, and he called me into his office one day and he said, I think that there's this thing on in Melbourne, it's called CLOC, and they're going to have their first meeting in Australia, and I think you would be a good person to go to this. And that really was the beginning of my legal ops journey and my CLOC journey. Because I went to Melbourne and I sat around a table at Telstra and there were 30 people who wanted to do what I wanted to do. And it was a real light bulb moment. So came back, created the business case for the role, started my role at AMP, and then left AMP and created my role at IAG as well. So that's my journey. And really haven't looked back. It's been very fulfilling.
And have you seen kind of your peers, and I'm thinking there about your in-house counsel peers, have you seen many of those kind of make the move into the legal ops space as well? Or, is it like 50-50, or is everybody becoming a legal ops professional? How's that work?
No, I mean, obviously there are many, many more lawyers than there are legal ops professionals, but it's really exciting, I think, when I see peers interested in legal ops. I've had a number of people contact me to talk about my journey and how to create those pathways. I was just so excited to see on LinkedIn just last week, one of the very first paralegals that I had when I was in legal ops at AMP has, who then went on to become a lawyer, has now transitioned into legal ops. And, I find that really quite exciting. So
Yeah.
yes, it's happening. I think legal ops people come from all different backgrounds, not just ex-lawyers. And that's good, right? As a multidisciplinary skill set, it's good to have different backgrounds contributing to our legal ops community.
Yeah, absolutely. A huge positive. And I want to get into, and we will a little bit later, just how the Australian clock community has grown and expanded as well, which is also a pretty incredible story. But Matt, let's round this out with your background and how you came to your role.
Happy to, Terry, and thanks for having us on. Always happy to talk about legal ops. So my background is slightly different to Katrina and Anna in that I am not a lawyer. I am not qualified as a lawyer. Do not take legal advice from me. But I spent about 18 years in a large law firm in business development and sort of strategic pursuits roles. So working with partners to expand their practice and groups of practices and to deepen client relationships that law firm has with its most significant clients. So my entry into legal ops came mostly through lots of conversations with lots of different general counsel towards the end of that period of time, where they were outlining their challenges, dealing with HR issues, finance issues, IT issues, all of this, the running of the legal team as a business unit, and then trying to think about how to bring some of that capability that exists inside law firms to those in-house legal teams, and working against some of the encouragements to do so and discouragements to do so. So I sort of hit middle age, realized I quite like my wife and don't sort of fit inside a sports car, and decided that the thing that had to change was the job. So I jumped fence from the law firm side to the large corporate side. Worked at a large investment manager with a general counsel who just started there, building sort of a team from scratch on a piece of paper. And that was sort of a 5-year journey building a legal ops team to do that. And then recently in the last year and a half, sort of doing a sort of a optimization program with the large super fund. So a year and a half into that, again on the in-house side. So that's sort of my background and how I came into doing this.
Yeah, fabulous. And again, just great to see folks in this function that come from such a diverse group of backgrounds too, as well. I want to jump into this next one of really kind of getting into a bit of the nitty-gritty of GenAI and legal ops. And this is a two-parter. So kind of kicking off with the first one, and I'm going to come to you, Matt, or stay with you for this one as well. All of you from your backgrounds that we've just heard have obviously been working in legal ops and as legal ops professionals for a bit. And I guess now we've all, one way or the other, had a chance to see how GenAI is impacting all of our roles and all of our organisations. But I'm wondering, as we sit here today, right now, Matt, has GenAI changed the legal ops function and or your role? And if so, how?
Well, my initial answer is yes, but I don't think necessarily in ways that are much more than other functions. Like, it's changing everything. So it's a mix of challenge and opportunity is how I describe what I'm seeing, or at least experiencing. So I think the the advent of GenAI and its infusion in lots of different tools and processes and ways of working means that there's lots of stuff that you can do now differently than the way you've done it before. There's lots of new things that are exciting to think about. Well, now, could I do that? Would these tools, would this capability help me to do that new thing that I wasn't able to do because it was either cost prohibitive or unreliable or not worth the, not worth the effort. So that's one thing. So I think certainly, and I think it's also increased a bit of an emphasis on legal teams and knowledge work more generally, where people outside the legal ecosystem imagine that a range of things inside the legal ecosystem could or should be done with the advent of GenAI differently. And some of that's right and some of that's wrong. So I think that's one aspect. The other thing I'd say is that all the existing change management issues that exist with legal innovation, legal transformation, are also there, and they've just been dialed up to 11. It's the spinal tap of change management, right? Everything's it's a bit more, it goes to 11 now, because of the enthusiasm and also the opportunity that GenAI sort of affords. That's it. The last comment I think from me would be that because of the, say, infusion of generative AI and the excitement around generative AI, real and imagined, across all of the platforms and providers and processes we currently use, there's a lot more. I think people expect that legal ops or think that legal ops are already across it, but we're also, like everyone else, drinking from the fire hose around. I think at the recent conference that the three of us presented at, we put up a wall of technology platforms that have just all have got AI, sort of the promise of AI infused in them, and being across that is an unrealistic challenge, but also legal ops is at the forefront of doing that. So it's a lot. That's how I describe that.
And that's actually the follow-up question I was going to ask you, Matt, which is, do you see in your role that you've got kind of a special responsibility to keep on top of this tech and bring it in, or at least support that in some very productive way for your team?
There's certainly an expectation of support, and I don't want to jump across things that I know that Katrina and Anna wanted to speak about, but there's an expectation, and when people come to legal functions, that the legal ops team is across all of that. Partly that's around knowledge of the technology and what it can do and should do, but partly it's around as a translator between the legal function and other parts of your organization. And so I think that the basics of the role, why does legal exist? What value is it adding? Where is it making its most important contribution? How do we articulate what legal is contributing to the org? Those basics really do have to be in place. And then you can have a meaningful discussion around the way generative AI should be augmenting that or improving that or making something more efficient, those sorts of things. But so the basics of the role, I think, are even more important because the technology is promising change in relation to some of those things.
But that combination of legal and business acumen, I guess, that you're bringing to that is also fundamentally important as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the just because we can doesn't mean we should question. Like, does it actually hold value for the organization, and why? Is legal worth the effort compared to other parts of the organization where it's, or how is legal informing for a non-core business part where it is part of a workflow? Is that the most relevant, valuable, important component for which generative AI is changing how we should do things?
Yeah, absolutely. Katrina, how about you? What are your thoughts about Gen AI and legal ops?
Yeah, thanks, Terry. Wholeheartedly agree with Matt's comments. I think from where I sit, it's really the advent of generative AI has really meant that the conversation around technology, the kind of questions that I get asked by the lawyers that I work with in my GC are just much louder for sort of knowledge workers. It's definitely forefront now in people's minds. If I think back even 2 or 3 years, I know the Centre for Legal Innovation was quite ahead of the curve in sort of standing up some of the generative AI roundtables and reports, but quite frankly, even 2 years ago, I wouldn't have had many lawyers in my team have a good understanding of generative AI or come to me with a question about a solution. Whereas now I think everybody's quite well trained, understands the basics of it, and they're starting to think about the solutions and the possibilities that it can bring. And so I think what that means for legal operations professionals is certainly in-house, I spend a lot more of my time thinking about generative AI solutions. In-house, we're sort of in a position where we need to have a view on both the legal point solutions, but also the enterprise solutions of generative AI, and constantly sort of thinking about you know, which is the better approach for the legal team, you know, in lots of different dimensions, both sort of in cost and scalability and the business cases that are available. So I spend a lot of my time thinking that through, and I think either pushing the lawyers into it or they're pulling me because they've got an idea. So there's a lot of work, I think, that goes on. And again, sort of just to round it out with Matt's comment, it's really now about it's definitely accelerated like the possibility of what we can do. And I mean, I had an example last week where about a year and a half ago, I built a very basic, you know, flow in Microsoft in Power Automate. Needed a little techie in our IT team to help me with some of the coding. Now, just a few weeks ago, Microsoft have released like an AI hub, which basically gives me all of that code and can set it up, and found ways to sort of streamline that flow, which is only like a year old or so. So already, you know, that technology is really enhancing that possibility that is at our fingertips.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also that balance where we're not necessarily seeing the enterprise solutions advancing as quickly as the individual solutions that are available. And how do you kind of marry that tension in a way as well? But I want to jump ahead a bit now. And I'm going to ask you, this is the second part of this question, which is where you think the legal ops function and role is going to be. And I'm hesitating to say 3 years because we've just spoken about how quickly a couple of years have gone by. But Anna, I'm going to ask you to put your futurist hat on. And what do you think? Where do you think we're going to be in 3 years, or less, if you like? Up to you.
I suspect it'll be less. But I do think, you know, based on what Katrina and Matt have said, this GenAI is only going to elevate the importance of legal ops competencies within a corporate legal department. We've seen the growth of legal ops over the last 5 years, but I think that's just going to become exponential over the next 2-3 years because of GenAI, because it's the legal ops competencies that are going to determine right solutions to solve the right problems, point solutions versus enterprise tech, and also determine when traditional lawyering is the thing that's required to deliver the service. I think that legal ops professionals are going to sit at the forefront of the upskilling and cultural change and adoption of GenAI within corporate legal departments. Going to be the change agents. You know, that's where those legal ops competencies, the tech choice, the upskilling, you know, getting the lawyers to embrace the solutions and incorporate them into their ways of working. And the third thing I think that we're going to see over the next 3 years is legal ops professionals really pressing their corporate panel firms to deliver on the GenAI efficiency dividend. And we can probably get into that in more detail, but it's really about ensuring that you know, the law firms change and adopt GenAI and deliver their services for benefit to corporate legal departments, looking at their spend, looking at their service delivery model, looking at the way that they bill. All of these things, this is going to be driven by legal ops over the next 2 to 3 years. And I think what we'll see at the end of that is a really changed relationship, hopefully, you know, and optimistically, a changed relationship between corporate legal departments and their panel law firms.
Yeah, absolutely. It's to me, it's almost given us the opportunity to rethink how we work, but right from the very beginning, you know, who's doing what bits, as you say, who's delivering what bits, how are we going to do it? It's almost a laser focus and reorganization of that. So, which is kind of exciting in lots of different ways. But Katrina, let me jump to you and get you to put your futurist hat on as well.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think it's going to be more and more about technology. And I don't necessarily mean someone that's on the tools, because I actually think they will become quite bespoke skills that maybe become part of the legal ops function. But if I'm thinking about sort of the strategic lens of legal operations, I just think technology is going to become more and more pervasive in everything that we do. If we think about with Clock, which I know we'll sort of go into a bit more, they've got a 12 core competency sort of skills, and I just see technology sort of part of each of those skills. So Anna mentioned our law firm. So how do we engage with our law firms and think about use of technology? How do we do our financial management using technology? What's our information governance look like when it comes to technology? So I think that from a profession, people that are in legal operations will need to have a really solid understanding of technology and how it comes at the enterprise that they work for and the legal team. So in a sense, you know, the head of legal operations is almost like the chief technology officer of the legal team. I kind of think about the projects that have sort of found their way to me as a legal ops professional. I often get the projects that are related to, you know, cybersecurity uplift around information governance, you know, retention and disposal. So I think there seems to just be that sort of picking up, I guess, of all of those kind of practice areas. I also just think more broadly, legal operations, and of course, you know, we're very biased, but more and more we're going to be in the driver's seat. I think lawyers are coming to us to help them, you know, test an idea, find a solution, embed a process, and that's like fabulous. Like that's the kind of thing that we love as well. So it's not just doing the technical technology, but then it's working hand in hand with the lawyers to sort of help them work better.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. I want to underscore one of the many great points that you said there, which is, to me, the absolute fundamental mistake is thinking that generative AI is about the tools and forgetting how incredibly pervasive it is in every aspect of the business. So yeah, loads of great points. And Matt, can't leave this one without getting you to put your futurist hat on as well.
Oh, look, the short answer is more legal ops people, team structures tending towards having some more non-lawyer resources baked into them as the way that they operate as standard, particularly for larger corporate teams. I think, you know, if you're looking at an organization and you're looking at the legal team, there's going to be a range of complementary skill sets. I think you'll see a further reduction in the idea that every lawyer is a super lawyer containing a cape that's able to do absolutely everything that comes across their desk, but the ability to collaborate with multidisciplinary capabilities in order to deliver an outcome. And I think legal ops should be a really core part of that. I think that'll happen at the speed with which general counsel, as the leaders of the functions, choose to embrace and double down on investing in legal ops as the key differentiator that helps them make sense of their function and its distinctiveness to their own organization and helps them tell that value story. So that's the meta narrative. In relation to generative AI, I think all the stuff that Katrina and Anna have pointed to is where that sort of hits the road. So if you can't answer what your legal function's for and how it works and why people are doing what they're doing, then you're not in a great position to be able to articulate how generative AI should be changing that and what the organization should expect from generative AI, or how the legal function could help the organization implement generative AI in more clever and powerful ways based on what matters. So you'll probably also see, I said I was going to be quick, I'm not being quick at all. You'll also see differentials between different sorts of organizations. So the tech first, move fast and break things style organizations will be doing things differently than highly regulated organizations that have got really careful layers around exactly, you know, why and where they add value and why that needs to be done carefully. So I think all of those things lead to more legal ops personnel working alongside increased legal teams delivering higher value. That's where I see it going for the best teams.
It is that redefinition of value, isn't it? And it's just important for people to be pausing on that, because it's not just value for you and obviously for the legal function, it's also your outside counsel, right? In this day and age, right?
Well, I think at the risk of getting to the point, I mean, internal legal and external legal in a corporate environment really only exist because organizations need legal services, and the mix of how that's delivered and what value it's providing from the perspective of the organization is key. So if ever legal falls into its sort of own holy huddle of self-referential importance and becomes disconnected from the value that those organizations are providing for their customers, stakeholders, and clients, then it becomes a little bit navel gazing and inward facing, and
Yeah.
loses that pointiness. So yeah, I think the articulation of why things exist and where they're adding value is always going to be key.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked a little bit about how your roles are changing and also how the functions that you work in are changing. And the allure of legal ops is how I'm going to express it. So I want to jump into a little bit about legal ops careers, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but for folks that are sitting here today and listening to this or watching it, and they're thinking about a career in legal ops, taking on a legal ops role, and I'm thinking particularly in terms of capabilities and future career prospects, because we've touched on that as well. Katrina, what advice are you going to give those folks?
Yeah, I think three points to make, I think, Terry. I think the future sort of legal ops professional of the future needs to be tech curious and confident. And I kind of use my own journey. So I still need to do an awful lot of tinkering to sort of get under the hood and understand potential solutions and how I can sort of translate them for my lawyers. So I think, it's not to say you need to be the tech expert, but you need to know enough about it to have a good, strong conversation with the lawyers that you're supporting. And I think the sort of the correlation on my second point of that is you need to build strong relationships, not just with the lawyers, so they trust you, but also with other people that do have that expertise that you can pick up, the bat phone and say, I need you to explain this to me, or can you please help that? And that might be relationships within your organization. So, for example, building a strong relationship with your IT department, or it might be relationships in the ecosystem. So at law firms, at vendors, at ALSPs, people that have looked at something and can help you understand it. And then the third sort of capability or competency, I think that will become, or probably is, but will become more and more important, and I've touched on it already, is dialing into enterprise projects or programs that have, I guess, represent that interface between technology, maybe generative AI, and sort of some of the skills that the legal team has. So I think, for example, about governance, document governance. I'm thinking about like ethics. I'm thinking about cybersecurity. So, there is an absolutely great opportunity, I think, for legal operations professionals to sort of sit in those conversations and bring that blend of working with the legal team and the technology together. So don't sort of shy away from those things just because they're not purely a tech adoption implementation, or something that's strictly on the clock 12, for example. So they're my sort of three takes on it, Terry.
Yeah, and you're right. It's important to see all these things as interconnected. As we've discussed, it's pervasive. So it's touching all of those things that have fallen into that risk management portfolio that seems to be
that's right.
expanding.
And I think in-house, you don't have a choice as well. It's a little bit like, the in-house lawyers, like you get what comes in the door. And I think if you're an in-house legal operations professional, you need to also be mindful of the organization that you're working in and what they need, and bend to that a bit as well, and sort of work out where you can really add value to those projects, because perhaps the in-house lawyers don't have the same skill set that you have as being sort of the person on that project representing the legal team.
But the other thing you mentioned there, Katrina, which I think is also another really important point to kind of underscore, is that this tech's a little bit different from the other tech or tools that we're used to, and that you really do need to have some sort of basic understanding of how it works. And I guess in the earlier days, but unfortunately seem to still be the recent days, I think that's where people have run into problems, because they've not really understood at a fundamental level, not a specialist level, but a fundamental level, how the tech actually operates.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I guess I see the legal operations role as drowning out, or blocking out sort of some of that noisy stuff and filtering it for our in-house lawyers to make sure that they're getting what they need when they need it.
But I think to your point, Terry, it's hard.
Yes.
It's hard.
Yes.
And you have to be persistent, and you have to, I think, expect that you're not going to get it right the first time.
Yeah.
And it takes it takes a while, and I think that's absolutely borne out by the recent experience with the adoption of generative AI tools. This is not going to be an immediate overnight success and win. It's certainly going to be a test and learn and iterate and retry and move, pivot and all of those things. And I think from a skills perspective, I think that's, if people are thinking about legal ops, they need to think about that as well, that mindset and that that ability to be, quite resilient.
Yeah, and I think also it's just the pace of change. Changing all the time, and sometimes it's changing by the hour. For me, that's the other big influence, if you like, on capabilities or the skilling that you were speaking to in one way or the other, all of you really earlier on, that it's just constant. For me, it's a constant thing every day and by the hour every day. So if you're not curious to go to that point, then you're kind of in trouble, aren't you, Matt?
I think so. I like Kat nailed it with the curiosity. That's a really, like, your question was around, legal ops people looking at legal ops roles. What are the things that curiosity is a key one. Influence and persuasion, relationship management, being a human bridge between people who are doing things the way that they've done things, that are looking at why they do those things, and then articulating how that stuff works is one of it. The other thing that I think is going to become increasingly important as people become more comfortable with aspects of how generative AI technology is going to change some of the things that we do is the boring stuff, it's the stuff that no one really wants to pay attention to, but really kind of matters for how a team runs. Like, where is our stuff and what have we called it? Where have we put it? Can I rely on it? So much of the stuff that I see, and again, I'm not an expert. I'm not sure the people who are experts are real experts, in that they just seem so far ahead of where the noise is, and I'm certainly in the noise camp. But if the issues are around what is this doing and can I trust it, the more you look into it, the more I see people looking into it, the more it has to be built around a foundation of, well, I know what I've got at the moment, and I can trust these repositories of information and where it's going and who's touching it and why. So then I can assess whether or not the things that are being done with generative AI technology is reliable or not. So I think the boring stuff and needing to understand your information governance, needing to understand your data flows, needing to understand how your lawyers do their work, how they contribute to the organization's workflows is so critical. So it's curiosity about the technology, but curiosity about the technology as applied to how legal delivers its deliverables inside your organization and for whom. That so that you can so you can advise on, well, it's okay to play around with it here, it's not okay to play around with it here, here's an acceptable risk tolerance, here's an unacceptable risk tolerance. All those things need to be informed by curiosity about what it's doing and who it's helping.
I always say, Matt, it's a bit about doing, like, you got to do all the unsexy work before you get to the sexy stuff.
Yeah. There's a little bit of legal ops. This is why I'm really keen for legal ops to grow as a size of a function. But there's a lot of it which is like that scene from The Castle with Dennis Denudo, where he's dictating a letter to himself during the day, and then he stops and he puts the tape in, puts the headphones on, and does things at night. So there's like selling the idea around what things can change, and then actually doing in the background to make it work, and then bringing people along with you as they adopt that change. So anyway, not sure if that resonates with others.
But it does speak to those capabilities around working in a multidisciplinary environment and collaborating, right? Because, as the technology kind of becomes more and more specialized, we're going to have more and more specialists and almost micro specialists, really.
Absolutely.
So the ability, as you say, Matt, to bring all of those folks together and to be able to productively work on something is just critical.
And that should be something that's familiar to people in sort of with a legal background anyway. Like that, legal practice morphs every 5-10 years as new areas of law emerge and become like people double down on an area of technical specialty and then become an absolute deep expert in that over a 5-10 year period as a part of credentializing themselves as being someone who should be listened to. And with the technology and its application at really granular levels, there's opportunities for people to do that in ways that I don't think you can predict necessarily. You asked about a 3-year time frame. I'm not sure whether or not you can necessarily predict that I'm going to get this area bang right now, and I'm going to spend 5 years and I'm going to be the guru at that, because it will change. But curiosity about the broad area means that eventually it's like, oh, I'm the person that knows a lot about this, and therefore we can do this thing now. I think that's how it's going to emerge.
But that adaptability and flexibility, as you say, is critical features as well. Anna, what about you? What's your advice What's the
Well,
allure of
I've
legal
very
ops?
simple advice to anybody thinking about taking on a legal ops role is to get on the bus.
Okay.
You've heard it from Matt and Katrina.
Well, that sounds like pretty good advice to me. Let me kind of move into, regrettably, kind of wrapping this session. It's just been fabulous to hear all of your thoughts. And I know there are lots more. This is an amazing area that is expanding, and that you're going to be exploring that, obviously, in CLOC APAC 2025. So I wanted to get into that a little bit and just let people know a little bit more about that, particularly, I guess, if they're in legal ops or thinking about it. I was at CLOC APAC last year in 2024. It was fabulous, and so I can only imagine what it's going to be like this year. But I guess let me start initially at the beginning to go forward in a way. So for those that don't know who or what CLOC is, and you can see the amazing backdrops here in terms of the summit. So for those who don't know, or how kind of this works in terms of global versus Australia, Matt, tell us a little bit about that to start off.
Thanks, Terry. So yeah, so for those who have, CLOC was formed about a decade ago, initially out of the US, but in recognition that legal operations professionals were doing the same thing in large corporations, expanded out. Over time, there are thousands of members globally in CLOC. There's a very strong US presence. Well, obviously, there's an Australian presence that Katrina and Anna and I lead. There's a UK and EMEA presence. It's growing in South America, sort of localized expression of what legal ops means for people doing legal operations work. The community includes not just in-house legal professionals and in-house corporate teams, but also there are legal ops inside law firms. There is the ALSP, or you'll get into a debate with ALSPs about whether they're actually alternative or the new future, and they're both are right. But all of these people sort of make up the ecosystem. In Australia, it's a thriving ecosystem. I mean, the pattern and the format of, at the risk of doing the shameless plug for CLOC in Australia, there's at least quarterly meetings for a couple of hours with people like Katrina and Anna and I, sort of sharing common challenges, talking about what it is we're doing, and each of that building relationships around people that are doing similar things in adjacent, either by sector or by task. We get together and do that. Again, law firm, in-house teams, companies, vendors, providers, and we sort of go through what matters to us. And so a good example is, we sort of got together earlier in February this year and sort of said, what are the two major projects that each of us are doing? So we've got 50, 60 of us that have gone through and talked about what's on our agenda to deliver for our functions this year, so we can connect with people who have either just recently done that thing or are about to do that thing. So it's that community focus. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. And as a declaration of interest, I should say that the Centre for Legal Innovation is a very proud supporter of CLOC and CLOC Australia, and delighted to do that. But Katrina, let's just get into a bit more of the nitty-gritty of the summit. Where is it? When is it? Again, doesn't hurt to repeat that. And what can we expect from CLOC APAC Summit 2025?
Yes, thanks, Terry. So the date to mark in your diary, if it's not already in there, is Wednesday, August the 20th. We'll be in Sydney. We will be at the Ivy, so nice and central in the Sydney CBD. The summit's going to be amazing, so amazing that we've got our own backgrounds to start promoting it, and fabulous as well, Terry, as you say, to have the Centre for Legal Innovation on board as a proud partner community supporter. So really wanting to get the word out there. A few highlights for sort of what is planned in terms of the program. The theme of the day, we're going to pick up the theme from the Global CLOC Summit, which is Open New Doors. And I think that really resonates with, I guess, some of the opportunities and things that we've already talked about in this chat today, Terry. We're going to have a session on emerging trends with some global guests. So it's always fabulous, I think, to get perspectives from people, legal operations professionals that are overseas, or people that have a remit that takes into account what's happening overseas, particularly I'd say in the US, because they're just a bigger market and they often have done some of that thinking or moving, so we can learn from that in our Australian ecosystem. We're going to have, we're hoping, a keynote that will be announced shortly, so watch this space. Back for more fun this year, we're doing our very successful sort of small group roundtable discussions, which was something that we tried as a new item last year, but was really well, I guess, very successful. People loved the opportunity not just to sit and listen and hear people talk, but also be an active part of that conversation in a table sort of setting. We're going to this year do a session on careers, sort of the paths in and out of legal operations. So, you know, if you're someone that's looking to move into legal ops, we will be talking about that as well. And then finally, Terry, we can't, you know, not go further than talk about the much loved debate. That is a great format that we do at the end of the day. We're cooking up a very spicy topic that will keep our audience engaged and laughing right up until the end. So that's the Wednesday, August the 20th. I should also note that CLOC is bringing out the CLOC Academy the day before, so Tuesday the 19th. And the CLOC Academy is an opportunity for people that want to do a deeper dive, more of sort of a learning you know, study session, I guess, in a sense. So we've got the CLOC 100, which is people that are newer to CLOC and legal ops, where we'll have experienced practitioners take our learners through the CLOC 12 foundations with the most amazing you know, slide deck toolkit to take forward for your job. I wish I had it sort of 7 years ago when I started, and also an opportunity, I guess, to connect with, sit shoulder to shoulder with people that are starting in the profession. And then we're doing for the first time the CLOC 200, which is that sort of, you know, next iteration of the people that are doing CLOC in practice and are sort of wanting to build on the foundations. And we're going to be delivering 2 sessions on strategic planning and another one on business intelligence. So they are add-ons to the CLOC Summit, and they're incredibly priced and amazing opportunities, and the seats don't last at those CLOC academies. So I think the call to action is, and you know, Anna will give you a bit more details, but please go out and register and secure your spots at the CLOC Summit, but also consider the CLOC Academy the day before.
And just to underscore that registration is open. I know that we're going to get into that and just repeat that again in a second, but we'll be sure to put the relevant links with the recording notes for this as well. If folks are looking for them, be easy to find. So Anna, we get to round out what is the wonderfulness of CLOC APAC 2025 with you. Why should folks go to this summit when obviously there are others in the market? And I say that without being provocative, just a statement of fact. What's different in a way about this one?
So CLOC is unique in the market because it is the only dedicated legal operations conference that you can attend. And by that I mean every session and every attendee is focused on the development of legal operations. So we don't have sessions that are on legal topics. We don't have you know, a focus on selling technology. This is about building skill sets in legal operations and meeting other people within that broad ecosystem who are doing the same. The other key, I think, differentiator at CLOC is that we focus on practical content and takeaways. So we're always looking at upskilling our community with things that they can do, you know, at a really practical level. And then the third thing, and I think this is a key differentiator, is that the connection and the community within CLOC actually next level. You know, there is so much openness to sharing, collaborating, upskilling, sharing knowledge, learning from each other. And that, I think, is what's you know, so special about our CLOC conference and our CLOC community. CLOC is a peer-driven, not-for-profit, member-driven organisation. So it's by members for members. The content at CLOC is curated by the co-chairs of CLOC in Australia. And it's specially curated to have an Australian focus and an Australian application. And coming to the conference will really help you connect with our community and build those relationships, and then enable you to leverage that more in a deeper way after you leave the conference. To register, simple, go to clock.org and select Clock Australia Summit, which is one of the events that you'll see at clock.org. You can also have a little look at some of the things that are coming out of CGI, the Clock Global Conference. And another initiative that we have this year is around bring your GC. So we're encouraging legal ops people who register to think about bringing their GC along to the conference to educate their GC on the value of legal ops. It'll really, I think, enhance their ability to deliver in their role. Any registered legal operations professional can invite their GC to attend at 50% of the current all access badge rate. So to take advantage of that count, I think there's an opportunity to do that when you register, or just get in touch with us as well. We want to see GCs at our conference, and we'd really encourage our members to consider that. So yeah, quite simple. Clock.org to register.
Amazing. I mean, amazing content by the sounds, amazing initiatives, and also for all of you really, but Anna particularly picking up on that point of community. You know, we're all about community, so we understand that and just how incredibly important that is, and to have that opportunity, particularly to be in person, I think is the other really important one there. I wanted to just take a second and congratulate you, Katrina, Anna and Matt, on the amazing work that you're doing in leading the Australia chapter, and to acknowledge you for that. It's really jumping ahead leaps and bounds under your leadership. Thank you for it, and congratulations on that as well. That's amazing. Folks, sadly, you're most welcome. Sadly, that brings us to the end of the chat, but hopefully lots of great information. If you're thinking about a career in legal ops, if you're in it, and a place to go in the very immediate future for you to enhance all of those amazing skills and to remain curious. So if that having been said, Katrina, Anna and Matt, thank you very much indeed. And I look forward to seeing you at the very least in August.
Thank
Well,
you.
Terry,
Thanks,
thank you very much.
Terry. Great to chat.